Let's get real. You're watching this for one reason. Something inside you knows this habit. The constant need to masturbate, to escape, to get that quick hit of pleasure, is destroying your potential. It's not just about porn. It's not just about lust. It's about control. Control over your thoughts. Control over your urges. Control over the man you're becoming. Because here's the truth. If you can't say no to yourself, even when no one's watching, you'll never have the strength to say yes to the life you truly want. So, stop masturbating now. And what happens next? You're about to find out. The modern addiction no one talks about. You might think this is normal. Everyone does it, right? That's what we're told. From the time we hit puberty, we're flooded with messaging. It's healthy. It's natural. It relieves stress. But what they don't tell you is this. Masturbation, especially when fueled by porn, is hijacking your brain, your confidence, your masculinity, and your focus. Every time you give in, you're reinforcing a powerful message to yourself. I can't handle discomfort. I need instant gratification to feel okay. I'll trade long-term purpose for short-term pleasure. And guess what? Your brain believes it every single time. Let's talk science. Dopamine is the brain's motivation chemical. It's what drives you to chase, to pursue, to strive. But when you blast it with artificial spikes, porn, masturbation, endless scrolling, your brain adapts. It gets numb. So real-life challenges, they feel boring, hard, unmotivating. You've drained your drive before the day even started. Here's how it works. Day 1, you give in, a little pleasure. Day 2, you're less motivated. You cope with another release. Day 5, you're stuck in a loop. Day 30, you can't even focus on a book, let alone build a business or face rejection. It's not a joke. This is neurological warfare. And you're the one pulling the trigger. Now listen, this isn't about guilt or shame. This is about discipline, one of the core tenets of Stoicism. The Stoics believed that freedom doesn't come from doing whatever you feel like. It comes from mastery over impulse. No man is free who is not master of himself. Epictetus, desire is not evil, but uncontrolled desire, that is weakness in disguise. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." How true is that when it comes to masturbation? You're not chasing pleasure. You're running from pain, loneliness, boredom, insecurity, lack of direction. Instead of facing those dragons, you open a tab. Stoicism calls you to face reality head-on, to train your mind to endure discomfort and thrive in it. So let's answer the big question. What happens when you stop masturbating? Here's what most men experience, and more importantly, what you'll experience if you commit. Phase 1. Withdrawal and turbulence, days 1 to 14. This isn't easy. Your body has been conditioned to expect a hit. You're going to feel irritability, brain fog, cravings, boredom, emotional swings. Why? Because your brain is recalibrating. It's no longer getting dopamine for free. This is the hardest part, but also the most powerful opportunity. Right here, your brain is rebuilding its natural drive system. You are learning how to sit with discomfort and not flinch. This is what separates men from boys. Stay busy. Move your body. Channel the urge. Each time you resist, you build resilience. Phase 2. Recalibration and clarity. Days 15 to 45. Something strange begins to happen. You're no longer exhausted by 3 p.m. You wake up with purpose. Your eye contact sharpens. Your voice deepens. You start to feel different. Women notice, not because you're chasing, but because you're centered. You're holding your energy. your life force. This is what some call sexual transmutation, turning raw desire into fuel for creativity building. Competing, leading Marcus Aurelius didn't waste his energy on fantasy. He focused on action, mission, duty. So can you. Phase 3. Power and Purpose. Days 45 to 90 plus. This is where it all comes together. You're no longer just quitting a habit. You're becoming a different man. Your thoughts are clearer. Your mood is stable. You're no longer chasing. You're attracting. You don't fear challenge, you crave it. And the best part, you're in control. That's the goal of all this. Not purity, not perfection. Power. The power to choose. To say no to what weakens you, and yes to what strengthens you. Still think this is hype? Let's talk about what men report after 60 to 90 days of NoFap. Increased testosterone, better posture and body language, laser-sharp focus, skyrocketing confidence, no more social anxiety, greater presence in conversations, stronger workouts and physical stamina, reduced depression symptoms, deeper voice and improved sleep. No pill, no program, no trick, just a clean brain and directed energy. This is not magic. It's biology plus discipline. We've covered the physical and psychological changes. But here's what most men don't realize. Quitting masturbation isn't just about stopping a habit. It's about rewiring your mind. Because this isn't a battle against your body. It's a war against your programming. From an early age, you've been programmed to seek pleasure, fast food, fast entertainment, fast women, fast dopamine. Everything in society trains you to consume, not create. And when you're used to getting easy pleasure, your tolerance for challenge dies. That's why so many men can't commit to goals. Quit when things get hard. Fear rejection. Avoid discomfort. Stay broke, bored, or bitter. The system is designed that way. Because weak men are easier to control. You don't need chains when your brain is already in a cage. Let's make this brutally clear. Every single time you give in to the urge, every time you reach for your phone at 2 a.m. to relieve stress, you're not just wasting time. You're casting a vote for the man you'll be tomorrow. And when you vote for pleasure over purpose, you are shaping your identity, your discipline, your destiny. This is how you slowly become a man you don't respect. But there's good news. You can vote differently. Right now, today. Here's where it gets exciting. Your brain is not fixed. Thanks to neuroplasticity, it's constantly changing based on what you feed it. If you feed it porn, pleasure, and passivity, it builds those circuits. But if you cut the cord and feed it challenge, clarity, and discipline, you become something entirely different. This is why the first 30 days are hell. Your brain is pruning the old you and building the new. That's why you feel cravings. That's why you feel fog. That's why you're tempted to quit. But if you endure, you evolve. Most men live in reaction mode. They don't realize what triggers them. To win this battle, you must learn what leads to relapse. Start paying attention to your emotions. Are you bored, lonely, angry? Your environment. Are you isolated, scrolling in bed, watching TikTok half naked? Your time. Do you have structure, or are you winging every day? Awareness creates space, and space gives you the power to respond, not react. This is where stoicism comes back in. If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. Marcus Aurelius. Your urges are not enemies. They are opportunities to train your will. Here are some habits that silently kill your ability to quit masturbation. Endless scrolling, TikTok, Instagram, shorts, all softcore dopamine loops, sleeping late. The later you're awake, the the weaker your mental guard. Lack of goals, without purpose, the brain looks for pleasure. Eating like crap, junk food leads to junk mind. Your hormones spiral. Skipping workouts, a weak body reinforces a weak identity. Cutting out these habits might feel uncomfortable at first, but soon you'll feel clearer, stronger, and calmer. This is how you replace weakness with power. Imagine this. You wake up early. You breathe deeply. You're not chasing pixels. You're chasing purpose. You walk into a room and people feel something different. That's sexual energy retained. It's not about being pure. It's about being focused. Your brain is sharp. Your emotions are stable. You don't crave validation. You radiate direction. That's what happens when you stop letting your lower self control your higher purpose. This isn't just about psychology and hormones. There's something deeper here, something spiritual. Your sexual energy is life force. In ancient traditions, from Taoism to Vedic texts, this energy was considered sacred. It fuels vision, creativity, vitality, leadership. When you constantly release it, you weaken your aura. People can feel it. But when you retain, you radiate a presence that doesn't need to be explained. It's in your walk, your tone, your silence. Stoics called this eudaimonia, the flourishing of the soul. And it starts with self-control. Let's get real again. You're not the only man going through this, but most are too ashamed to talk about it. That ends here. Drop a comment. I'm in. Let the algorithm know you're not here for shame. You're here for power. And if this video helps, like, subscribe, share with a brother who needs to hear it. This isn't just self-help. This is self-reclamation. So you've made it through the urges. You've pushed through the fog. You've started to feel energy, clarity, and power return. But now something bigger happens. You don't just feel better. You start to feel reborn. Because what you're really experiencing isn't just no-fap success. It's the revival of your masculine essence. Let's zoom out for a second. Look around today and ask yourself, where are the strong men? Not fake bravado, not loud influencers yelling online. I'm talking about the grounded, quiet, unshakable kind of masculinity, the kind that builds families, protects communities, leads with wisdom, and doesn't need a screen to feel powerful. That version of masculinity is disappearing. Why? Because we're flooded with the exact opposite. Hypersexuality, distraction culture, dopamine slavery, anti-discipline messaging. Masturbation isn't just a side habit in this environment. It's a central weapon in the attack on men. When you quit masturbating, you're not just quitting a behavior, you're reclaiming your edge. Your aggression becomes assertiveness. Your distraction turns into focus. Your apathy transforms into hunger. You start walking into the world differently. You're not controlled by urges. You're in charge of your energy. And that shift changes everything. How you show up at work, how you speak to women, how you carry yourself in a crowd, how you feel when you're alone. You go from chasing to choosing. That's masculine power. That's what this journey unlocks. Let's go deeper into what semen retention really is. This isn't just about not nutting. It's about harnessing your most primal energy and transmuting it into deep focus, stronger workouts, clearer decision-making, fierce creative output, spiritual elevation. Your body begins to recycle that energy. Testosterone levels begin to normalize and increase. You feel more alive and strangely more peaceful. Not angry, not frustrated, but centered. This isn't fantasy. There are thousands of men, including monks, athletes, and leaders, who've practiced this across centuries. And now, you're joining them. Here's the brutal truth most avoid. A man who can't control his lust will never reach his full potential. Why? Because lust isn't just about sex. It's about appetite. And when you can't discipline your appetite, you'll betray your values, abandon your mission, settle for mediocrity, crumble when tested. Every powerful man you admire, whether he's a historical figure or a modern-day role model, had to learn this. Masturbation isn't some side vice. It's the gateway drug to self-destruction. But when you close that gate, you open the door to mastery. The Stoics didn't suppress desires blindly. They understood their power and learned how to direct them. A man who has conquered his own impulses is greater than one who has taken a city. Epictetus. When you feel the urge, remind yourself, it's not you. It's a chemical signal. You've beaten it before. You'll beat it again. The urge is a test, not a trap. Reframe the urge as fuel. You don't run from it. You rise above it. You don't repress it. You redirect it. This is how you train your mind to be like tempered steel. Sharp, durable, and unbreakable under pressure. You know what's crazy? While most guys are stuck in a cycle of porn, low energy, guilt, depression, escapism, you'll be operating on a whole different frequency. You'll wake up before they do. You'll stay focused longer than they can. You'll build while they scroll. You'll approach when they freeze, because you've cut the root of their biggest weakness, addiction to instant pleasure. This is the ultimate advantage in business, relationships, fitness, and life. And it's not something you can fake. People feel your energy. And if you're holding on to it, they feel your fire. Most men today are consumers. But when you stop leaking energy, you return to your original nature. You become a creator again. You write, you build, you lead, you coach, you invent, you move people. This is why so many men who quit porn start new businesses, launch YouTube channels, get in shape, or step into leadership roles. Your brain finally has space to build again. And your spirit? It finally has something worth fighting for. You've come this far. You've broken the loop. You've rewired your mind. You've reawakened your masculine energy. Now it's time for the final phase, becoming the kind of man who cannot be broken. Because quitting masturbation isn't the final goal. It's the foundation for a life of dominance, purpose, and legacy. Let's finish this. Once you've freed yourself from porn and masturbation, you'll find a vacuum. You'll have more time, more energy, more drive. But without direction, all that energy will collapse in on itself. Here are the 3 foundations every man must build next. 1. A clear mission. A man without a mission is a man who drifts. You need a reason to wake up early, train hard, and say no to distractions. Your mission doesn't have to be grand at first. Start small. Build a business. Train for a competition. Write a book. Build a better relationship with your family. Level up financially. Your energy must go somewhere, or it will turn back into urges. Marcus Aurelius didn't sit around reflecting for the sake of it. He wrote, ruled, and built. Find your North Star, then move toward it daily. 2. A ruthless routine. Men thrive on structure. Once you remove the chaotic rhythm of dopamine addiction, you'll need a new system. That system is called routine. A strong daily routine might include early rising, cold showers, morning journaling, training your body, deep work sessions, strategic rest. Remember, weak men seek motivation. Strong men rely on structure. Your routine should make failure inconvenient and discipline automatic. 3. A circle that elevates you. You can't do this alone forever. Isolation is dangerous. You need brothers, mentors, and allies who hold the same values. That could mean joining a men's group, engaging in accountability challenges, reading together with a tribe, training with others following creators who promote truth, power, and discipline. Your circle should raise your standards, not drain your strength. Here's something powerful you'll notice. Your relationships will transform. Not just romantically, in every area. Women. You stop seeing them as objects. You connect deeper, with intention. You become more attractive because you're not needy. You're full. You lead with purpose, not lust. Friends and family. You show up more present. You speak with authority and warmth. You inspire people just by being you. When your energy isn't leaking, people feel it, and they treat you differently because of it. Let's go even deeper. True self-mastery leads to spiritual alignment. When you no longer serve your flesh, your spirit awakens. In Stoicism, this is called living according to nature, aligning your actions with virtue, purpose, and universal order. When you transmute lust into courage, you stop hiding. Justice, you lead with honor. Temperance, you control your emotions. Wisdom, you seek truth over comfort. You become more than a man. You become a force, one that's no longer distracted by fantasy, but rooted in the present moment, fully alive. Let's be honest again. This isn't a straight path. You'll slip. You'll fall. You'll be tempted. But that doesn't mean you've failed. What matters is who you choose to become afterward. Every relapse is a lesson. Every urge is a test. Every moment of struggle is a call to rise higher. Difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body. Seneca. This path isn't about perfection. It's about progression. Fall down 7 times, get up 8. You weren't born to be a slave to screens. You weren't meant to live life hunched over, hiding from your own potential. You were made to build, lead, conquer, love, protect, inspire. But none of that happens when your power leaks out daily into the void of lust and fantasy. So ask yourself, what kind of man do I want to be when this video ends? The one who nods, agrees, and goes back to old habits? Or the one who draws a line in the sand and never looks back? If it's the second one, drop a comment. I'd choose strength. If this message hit something inside you, like this video, subscribe for more masculine stoic content. Share this with one man who needs to remember who he is. We are building an army of men who refuse to live sedated. No more shame, no more weakness, no more wasted time. This is your moment. You stop now, and what happens next? You become unstoppable.